Hmm.
Well, Hugh, I do believe that this is episode 8 of this here Leadership Uncertain show podcast that we have been doing, where we are having adventures together and talking about adventures in uh, confusion, power, love,
And dignity.
dignity.
Yes.
And as always, I've got a little something, a little stone to throw in the pond to see where the ripples may go. And you, it sounded like had a stone that you might toss into the pond. Why don't you start with your stone?
I had a stone.
You said moments before we went live. I guess maybe we'll talk about that on on the air.
Oh, well, so, the curious thing that I'm consistently challenged by in my organization, where I have the pleasure and the blessing of having multiple departments to be able to take direction from, to give direction to, is that each one of them is achieving things and falling behind on things and
Mhm.
working with each other and not working with each other and training and developing stories and having adventures and having collaborations and working through challenges of either the outside world or internal personalities or internal circumstances. And I wonder sometimes whether or not the thing that we keep prizing as success really functions.
Hmm.
There are so many ways to be successful and so many ways to fail. And all of it is just this really strange tapestry. And at this point, there were so many stories. I realized that in order to protect my thinking, my attention, my time, and this is a strategic coach concept, my confidence, I have to manage the story that I'm telling. What am I focusing on? What am I taking into the next moment so that I can inspire or correct or engage or chastise or fire or cut off or empower?
Hmm.
And where am I failing such that I can make failing a neutral event, treat it objectively, just as I kind of realize I have to do with success. And when they're both happening at the same time in different realms, how do I manage my focus so that I get to remediate the things that will take us down while maintaining a positive enough posture that my team continues to step forward? Because a lot of times we step forward when we don't know what's supposed to come next.
Well, I think there are likely interesting relationships between the stone you just threw
Was that a
and
stone? That felt more like a dump truck. I just started hucking
in
rocks
the
into the
in the
water.
context of the universe we inhabit, right? It is but a stone.
Sure.
Um, and the stone that I thought I thought I know very often that the things that I say pain you, and so I thought to myself, what can I pain Hugh with today?
I'm glad that
And
I've given you goals in life.
yes,
This is
and
exciting.
so it's with that kind of playfulness that I put forward to you that I have titled our episode "The Loneliest Enterprise."
Hmm.
And just this morning I had another of these things that I've now started to do every 2 or 3 weeks. I have a session. It's
Hmm.
open to leaders of organizations, large and small, whoever would like to come. Uh, we're going to spend an hour on this. And today it was, having a motivated and engaged and initiative taking workforce.
Okay.
And we spend an hour together in these sessions. And I'm sure if I were to tell them, we're going to spend the first 30 minutes or so, just hearing your stories of challenge, frustration, whatever it is, however it occurs for you with this topic, they would not be interested in coming to that. And yet, it is very clearly their favorite part of the time. Right? I spend the second half an hour sharing with them some usually kind of mind shifting
Resources.
perspective on
Sure.
how to have less frustration with it.
Sure.
Today I was saying things like, stop wrestling with reality and just embrace it. Uh, uh, it's very clear that, and I've gotten this feedback from them, that first half hour is incredibly valuable,
Mm.
where they're just hearing from others and not feeling like they are alone in struggling with in insert leaders struggle here.
Well, I mean, you raise a really good point. One of the foundational elements of civilization is the capacity for members in any community to be able to first not feel like they're alone.
Mm,
Because genetically, I mean, the reason why we talk about pubescent development focusing on not standing out has everything to do with a biological imperative to not die.
mm-hmm.
Isolation means death. And I remember a really good book by a guy, I think he's still alive. His name is Matt Ridley. And he writes the book called um, The Rational Optimist is the name of the
Mm,
book.
mm,
And in it, it's a really fascinating book. It talks about the history of the development of wealth across civilizations. It's not just about people, but how does a country get rich? How does a civilization that spans multiple countries get rich? How does a continent become wealthy and take 10,000 years to do it? And he creates this posit that says the number one determinant of uh, civilization decline, number one focused ingredient in destroying any civilization. And he cites these Indonesian tribes that would go backwards. So they would get to an island and within 100 years forget how to build boats.
mm.
Stuff like that is self reliance. The number one ingredient for civilizational poverty is self reliance.
Wow.
And I
Wow.
thought that was a mega shift, tectonic shift in perspective.
It really is huge, and I think about my own self, right, and kind of the things that I have learned and the
Mhm.
things that I need to unlearn, that I strive to unlearn. And self reliance is one of those things that I have learned and would be better served now to unlearn. The I went to the Landmark Forum, which is a you know it's a controversial organization that I happen to love and have had nothing to do with for almost a decade now, but really appreciate what I learned there. And they talk about the racket that you run, right? The racket being kind of the frame, the message from which you are operating. And my racket, as I recall identifying it nearly a decade ago now, and one that is clearly still relevant for me, is
Mm.
I've got this covered. Right. And whatever it is kind of like, yeah, I got this covered. And I think about the amount of time as a kid that I felt as though that's what I needed to bring.
Mm.
And hard old habits die hard, I guess.
So many conflicting feelings on that. And I see your point. I offer no resistance. And I also see where that in the right doses, because again, why do people believe in us as leaders? Why does your team follow you? It's not because they think you know everything, it's because you act as if everything and anything that happens can be made to be okay.
Mm. Yes.
So it's, I've got this energy with a certain smattering of confidence and humility and compassion and kindness and resolve. You
Yeah.
know, one of the things that it was a really powerful moment in my company where I realized, I think it was when we crossed, it took forever to learn how to make $100,000 a year. And then it took a different level of skill to make over $500,000 a year. And then when we broke $1 million a year, I started getting afraid
Mm.
because it was like, oh God, now I have a team. I've got to take care of people. And what if they leave? And it was when we broke like one and a half and we were pushing two, I realized one of the most important skills was to stop being afraid of firing people or that they
Mm.
would leave. Because at some point, I realized that taking that fear along was stopping me from doing the things that would be absolutely necessary for the
Mm.
company to evolve. And I was entertaining all these fears that kept us small.
Mm.
And so a lot of times I will have managers come to me and say, oh my gosh, if we don't manage this particular business challenge or this cultural challenge, so and so is going to leave. This
Mhm.
person's going to leave. And I will look and I realize that I get to be responsible for the environment that we create. So if there is dysfunction, let us face it head on. However, this place is not a place where I am going to, even me, like I can be fired, right? If I am not worthy of the work will not come to me anymore. Like if, and so uh, giving up the fear that so and so will leave because I was resolved that this company has enough to be able to go forward and be successful no matter what.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that's a disposition. That is the I've got it energy, but kept in some kind of balance with, well, it's not so much I've got it, it's we've got
We've
it.
got this covered. Yes.
We've got this.
Yes.
And we're rolling together and we're negotiating and we're compromising and we're collaborating with our customers and we're figuring things out and we're making mistakes and things are breaking and
Yeah.
the sky is falling and it's Tuesday. Like that's just kind
I I think the statute of limitations on this has probably passed. So I'll tell you a story. Um, you know, I had a theater company, and in our first moments of existence, and in our first show, we had taken over an abandoned, essentially a vacant storefront,
of,
and we built this incredible black box theater out of rented curtains that we screwed into the wall. I mean, it was magnificent, shabby chic, really fun, and we were running on a shoestring budget
mm,
uh, with the bare minimum of stuff that we could handle. And in Tech Week, which is the usually about 5 days where you add the technical elements to the show before showing it to an audience,
okay.
which is a very tight timeline to try to get all of your tech incorporated into a show in such a way that it's ready to see an audience is a tight timeline, especially when you've never run a show and nobody's ever run a show in this space before.
Mm,
And we had rented dimmers to change the levels of the lights and so on, and we were running them at their capacity. You know, if we'd turned all the lights up to 100%, there was no way they were going to, right? All the lights, thankfully, we didn't need them at 100%. We're running the show lights, you know, down around 80% and lower. And still, they were somehow popping the fuses.
Okay.
and we were running out of fuses. We could not figure out how can we run these things because we're right there at the edge of what we need. We're trying to run things a little bit lower. We could not solve the problem, and the whole cast is now a powerless to do anything. So that all of
Right.
the actors are standing around, kind of with their arms folded, twiddling their thumbs with nothing to do, which is never a position I want to have an actor in for a long because
Right.
that position is not good for anybody.
Right.
And they're seeing me and the tech team
Duking it out.
struggle
Yeah. The
to
struggle bus.
to succeed.
Yeah.
And so their fear is not only is their boredom ramping up, but so is their fear. And what a terrible combination. And and I just remember thinking, thank goodness this time, I was mature enough not to say I've got this covered, but
Mm.
we've got this covered. The tech team is going to figure this out, and I think we need 40 more minutes before we are really secure and we will have solved this problem.
Mm.
And so it was an important moment for me to say to the actors, even though it's hard to dismiss anybody during tech week, y'all go take 40 minutes. You don't need to watch this. We are going to have this solved when you get back. Like, that was a statement. And 40 minutes later, just about maybe 35 minutes later, we had 5 minutes to get a drink of water and take a few deep breaths.
And away we go.
Yeah, away we went. And maybe I don't give you the details that made me think that I should tell you that the statute of limitations has passed. Needless to say, we circumvented some of the with the keen knowledge of what is safe and what is not that my tech guy had. I
Mm.
felt confident in going around some of these shortcomings, and the important bit here for me was there was some intuitive sense, right? This is going to be a 40-minute issue.
Mm.
There's some intuitive and gut knowledge. I cannot make the actors stand here for this. And some other, intuitive sense. I don't have this covered. I don't have to solve this. I just need to create the environment where we are going to get this solved. And with the actors and the pressure of we've got to keep moving, that was not going to happen.
I'm gonna. You just triggered a memory where I failed at this. If I
Mm.
can share that with you. So this
I've got
was.
lots of those too.
Oh wow, boy did I screw. And it's funny because I think I may have shared with you back in. This is a long time ago. This was 1997. 1997. I found myself as the trainer of the Southeast Region Cadet Competition Drill Team. And we used to, I remember, I think I may have shared this with you. We used to say a prayer, and I
Mm.
realized we said it wrong because a friend of mine sent me a cup with it, but I'm going to still say it in the wrong way, understanding that it's not correct. We the willing, led by the unknown, have done so much with so little for so long that we're not qualified to do anything with nothing. That was the prayer that we would say. Now I found out later that it's slightly different and it's probably better. And it's we didn't know who it belonged to, but it was actually said by Mother Teresa.
Mm.
That was
Mm.
one of her quotes. And so the idea is that we can do anything with nothing because we were scrappy. And I remember we were preparing for the national competition. And these were 16 kids in the middle of Miami Springs. Nobody had money for summer camp. Nobody. I mean, it was just you trained on we had the opportunity 3 days a week to go spend time on a high school basketball court that was made of concrete in Miami in the summer. Um, Towards this is back in the day where the national competition was in December, so that's the training cycle for the last competition of the year after you win regionals was from September through middle of November into December, and then December was kind of hit or miss because there were a lot of school events and holidays, but you also had to work through your training schedule. So you get to nationals day after Christmas, and then the competition was normally held day after Christmas to the day before New Year's. It's just a really tough competition time. Um, I believed that we were in contention to win the whole thing. And I was one of 16. Our main trainer had left and left me in charge as not just the captain, but also the head coach. And I was a different flavor of arrogant back in those days, like a different flavor of arrogant. So I knew we could do that, but I used a lot of my communication style was I can have you rise to be better than you
Mm,
are.
mm,
And that is a terrible way to engage people generally. Um, I knew that I could run fast enough, and I knew I was smart enough to do the panel quiz, and I was smart enough to get the high score on the written test, and blah, blah, blah. But guess what? There are 15 other people on the team that also have to study and do the work and get the volleyball right and do the
mm,
running and all the other stuff. And my lieutenants were so frustrated with my arrogance because I got it energy.
mm.
And all you have to do is be a better human being to rise up to be like me. And that was the energy
Yeah,
that they were like, we don't believe in you and we don't believe in this team. We're already committed to going, but we don't think we're as good as you think you are, i.e., we are.
yeah.
And we ended up getting there. I got the highest test score in the competition. I ran the fastest mile in the competition, but the others didn't train because they didn't think they even had a chance.
Mm.
And would you believe that we placed second in the country, losing in 3 events by 1 point in each event? And it was a powerful, painful lesson that by not communicating, we got it energy,
Mm.
but instead personalizing it and living from a place of demeaning others, not
Yeah,
necessarily intending to. I missed the mark. And it was a powerful lesson. It was beautiful at the time. It was very, very painful. But what then happened was insert a few ingredients: the compassion, the kindness. It's like when you're in a position of leadership, especially when things are hard and the pressure is on, you want to be very focused on being effective and being efficient and all that other stuff. And you have to remember to be human. Like people, I still struggle with this. This is one of my struggles still, is that I have to remember, oh, that's right, people aren't as hyper focused on the outcomes. And so I have to remember to say hello and good morning and ask about their children and things I pretend that I don't care about. And then I go, oh, that's right, this is stuff that actually really matters. Because when they get sick, I hear them coughing and I go, oh my gosh, I don't want them here. I want them to go rest. And
mhm.
there's humanity that's available and a flurry of other thoughts that allow us to reconnect with the stuff that transcends the importance of the work. So
Yeah,
I say all of that to just share that now the company has a group of human beings and we regularly create the impossible. We regularly take on things that were seen by teams 3, 4 times our size as incredible. And that's kind of run of the mill for us because there is a culture of he probably doesn't know what the heck is happening. And that's okay. There's an okayness. Like I will
yeah,
come in and I will say, look, Carlos and Guy and those people just know way more than I do. All I have is a vision for us to be able to do something incredible together. I believe in the pit of my soul that we can do it. And you guys have the ability to step into this. How can I be
yes.
of service?
Well, it's so valuable that you say I have the vision that we can or that we will. There really is, I think, the capacity to build the organism that has the capability.
Mm,
Right, the organism is the organization, and one of the one of the beliefs that I continually have to disavow myself of is that it's my job to know how to be capable of, to have the
Ah,
answers to the understanding of the whole thing,
mm,
and then the team is going to be all, you know, a subset of my understanding, my knowledge, my ability,
mm.
and that I'm some gonna be some grand puppet master. And that is the loneliest enterprise, is being the leader and I think I don't know about all of us. Most of the leaders that I talk to bring up at some point or another this sense that they've got to know and understand and be the puppet master of all, that if anybody were to leave, they could step in to that role. And that is a lonely enterprise. And back to that, I've got this covered racket. That leads me, one of the ways that I cover is by covering that. I will hide this deficit, or I will hide, and very often from myself, this unfed nourishment that the organization needs. I just, close my eyes to it because I've got to have it covered, and that's the only way I can think of to cover it.
You have exposed a raw wound, my friend. I felt the stabs going in. Just the knife points were being entering my body. So I suffer from a significant amount of what you're describing, and it's interesting the moments when I. It's interesting because I am actually named as headcount in some of my own departments. So I'm
Mm,
in the sales department, I'm in the finance department, I'm in accounting, I'm also in production,
mm.
and I'm in sales.
That's a lot of departments.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And what's curious is every couple of years I get jettisoned from certain departments. Like I'm no
Mm,
longer in operations. So they have kicked me out. I am not an administrator anymore. They have jettisoned me. And occasionally production will get their mind right and they won't let me do work.
mm,
And that's I threaten them. I say, well, I can be here to sub in for folks, but just realize you're getting a crazy person. I understand how everything works, but don't expect me to follow any of your stupid processes that I end up creating or support the creation of. And they humor me. And then when they need help, sometimes I do step in, and I do find myself, and we have to work on this. It's beautiful when my team can go explore something that I have no functional understanding of.
mm,
Like there will be technology that's built that I don't know how it works. I know what it does. I understand how to sell its benefits because I understand the output. But if you asked me to recreate it, no clue. Would take me a long time to learn how. And I contrast those experiences with the ones where I feel like in order for us to take on that new project, I have to go learn a new skill,
mm.
and how long and painful that process is. But then again, there's a piece of me that says, well, I'm not going to let my people do something I'm not willing to do. And
Yeah.
contrast that with let them go have their own experiences and develop diverse talents in the business that can go be self sustaining. And somewhere in the middle, there's a balance because one is kind of living in tandem with the other.
It's only recent. It's only recently that, when somebody on my team works out, okay, here's how we need to do this.
Mm,
That I'm not saying, okay, show me. Like, great, I'm glad you figured that out. Show me, so that you aren't a single point of failure,
mm,
right? As I also need to know. Now there are some processes that are happening in our organization where I say, okay, great, go get with them and show them. And there's cross training going on. So we're curing some of the single points of failure without my being the cure. And It's both wonderful and terrifying.
You know what? That is a beautiful statement. I'll tell you where we are with that same process. I will tell you that I go to bed every night being eternally grateful for our admin and ops teams
Mhm.
because they get it. I had a very super radical idea slash disposition slash inspiration for assembling the work team that we do today. Get this, ready?
Yeah.
Project management people suck at admin. Oh my God. So the number of folks that fail because they are great at a technical skill, but they have to go chase checklists and follow up with meetings and be expected to manage calendars and all kinds of skills that we know that specialists who do great work just will fail at. But
Mm,
organizations are intent on having folks do all this other tech related stuff so they can spend 30% of the time doing actual work. So in our company, what we've done, it's funny, I spent some time with the Special Tactics Division in Fort Bragg, and they have an MOS in the Air Force called the Combat Controller. Are you familiar with that job?
no,
Okay, so you remember the movie Transformers, the first one? Michael Bay,
vaguely.
way back in the way. Terrible movie, fantastic advertising for the U.S. military. Well, if you remember, do you remember Tyrese, the singer? He was starring in that movie. He was one of the bald black fella. All right, no worries. I won't judge you. So effectively, there is an army group, but if you look at their uniforms, there are five army people or four army uh, soldiers and one Air Force. He was the one Air Force person there.
Mm.
And you scratch your head and you're like, well, why is there this Air Force dude hanging out with these Army Special Forces guys? What's going on there? Well, the Air Force has a position called the Air Force Combat Controller. And his or her job, I don't think there are any women yet. I don't think they've gone and opened it up to women. It's one of those, but there are like 500 of them in the world. And they're trained to have the highest combat standards to be able to embed with any service in any division, in any special operations division, in any unit in the world. They have the highest training standards. And what you do is they're trained to do everything. They're trained to scuba, jump out of airplanes, all sorts of stuff, combat control. Google it, it's a thing. What's interesting about them is their role in any embedded group is to be able to call in for air support on any mission that's happening. So they
Mm.
are trained air traffic controllers that are embedded with combat units.
Mm.
That is our model for operations and admin at our company. So we literally have a an intelligent, alert, aware, administrative operative embedded in our production team.
Mm.
And all she's doing is helping to create the appropriate checklists, ensure that we are capturing all of the collective knowledge because I have this hyperfixation on what I call corporate memory. It's the ability for us to learn things, communicate them, but also document them in real time so that we're
Mhm.
not creating extra steps to go not forget what we figured out how to do. It's amazing how you can forget to figure out what you figured out how to do already. So the idea was that we have this technical admin seed. They don't deal with expense reports. They handle all the meeting scheduling, internal and external, for all the production activities in the company, period. And that's all they do all day. They set up probably like 80, 85 meetings a month across the whole business. And they are incredibly aware of all the checklists for all the production work. And they can tell you where to go find any update or process tracking place for any project status for any project that we're working on. and where the communication has been with the customer. And this is an admin asset. This is not a production asset, but they're the ones that are managing and supporting the production folks at every turn so that our project managers are free to simply manage projects and just be told where to show up to today to follow this checklist.
Yes.
And it
Yeah.
allows for folks to just be able to do a whole lot more with a whole lot less effort. And they don't have to think about where they're going to have to go next. They don't have to think about coordinating a meeting. They just send an email and meetings will be popped up and calendars will be fought with and all these other things are happening. And it's not my most precious assets having to do that work that they're not good at. It's my other most precious assets that are doing the thing they love setting up meetings. That is
Yeah.
why they're on the planet. And they love, love, love doing it. And they're really good at it. So yeah.
I love that story. Just this morning talking with a group about delegating, right?
Mm,
We're kind of going through a manager training thing with all the managers in a local municipal. Uh, it's going to come to me.
it's okay.
Utilities, a
Yes.
utility. The folks who manage the utilities, and they were talking about the resistance to delegating crappy tasks. Their words
Ooh.
to people who report to them,
Mm,
and I immediately flashed on episodes of that show, Dirty Jobs. Are you familiar with that show?
I am not, but I'm tracking with you. Go ahead.
Mike Rowe, the host of the show, goes and does the dirtiest jobs you can imagine.
Mm,
Right. So if you
fishing
can
and rock
picture
and sludge and
there you go. Right, like an oil tanker that's had however many thousands of gallons of crude oil in and out of it again and again and again, and what is the kind of sludge that gets built up in there and the toxic fumes and all that. Somebody goes into those small spaces between the baffles,
right,
bodily goes in there to clean that stuff out,
right.
and that's a dirty job, and one that I am really, really glad that I don't have to do. And the number of jobs that I remember seeing him failing to do effectively
Sure.
alongside some seasoned pro, where I was thinking, man, not me. Like, thank goodness that is not me. And those people are saying,
This is
I love
great.
my job.
This is great. Well,
Yeah.
and I think that whole framing has to be challenged. Now, fortunately, I was a student of Dan Sullivan and the strategic coach for 13 years. And one of the things they focus on in that program is a concept called unique ability. As a matter of fact, there's a lady who wrote a book on the topic. Her name is Catherine Namura, and the book is that title,
Mm.
Unique Ability by Catherine Namura. So she writes that your goal as an entrepreneur. So there's this concept that there is this series of it's not so much tasks because you can't really think about unique ability as belonging to tasks, but more it's a way you show up to the world and you create value that is akin to breathing for you. And then there are a series of activities that are completely congruent with the way that that shows up. So for me, I know what it is. Unfortunately, since I've been 23 years old, I've known what mine was. I do two things really well. Everything else, but two things are just like probably one of the best in the world. One, I inspire confidence. So when I talk to you, chances are at the end of the conversation, you're going to feel like you can do something you didn't think you could do before.
Mm.
And I clarify thinking. So when we talk, we're probably going to talk about something that will have you feel like there's a clearer path that you can marry with this new confidence to go do something interesting. That's it. If I'm at church, if I'm talking to kids, if I'm being a dad, if I'm at work, if I'm at the dance hall, if I am teaching, if I am learning, those are the things I am doing because I can't not do them.
Mm.
And so her premise is that you get to aim to spend 90% of your time every day doing things that are congruent with your unique ability, that are in that inventory of activities for which you show up to the world. Because if you can align those things with making money, you won't be able to not make money. And so part of the exercise is delegating not just the things you're not good at to anybody else that has a pulse and a breath and can fog a mirror, but you are trying your best to stack your organization in such a way that the
Mm.
things that you are sending are now congruent with somebody else's unique ability. So all of a sudden, you have a superstar scheduler because they cannot wait to make their calendar picture perfect.
Yeah. Right.
And we have to be really sensitive and careful about what we think of as crappy tasks. And I had to go through a retraining. I had to come to realize every activity in my business has a level of grace and holiness. And just because I do not
Mm.
possess the competence, the competence to do it in at world class status does not degrade that activity to being a crappy task.
Yes. 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 Right. I think of chop wood, carry
Mm.
water.
Amen. Amen. And so the simplicity of the task does not does not make it applicable for degradation. And I'll tell
Mm.
you a story in my business. There is a fella who's a tech that works for our company, and he has the job of going through and preparing all of the initial project work that gets to happen. Now, if he is paying attention, his work is very simple, relatively, for all the other skills that are in the business. And depending on the quality of delivery that he has in doing his part, will determine how the rest of the project actually
Mm.
unfolds for many hundreds of hours that come after his part. If he is awake and alert and in his zone and is really giving excellent attention, the project has a much different probability of being incredibly delivered. If for some reason he gets confused or he's multitasking or he
Mm.
just doesn't, he's just not with it today, then it can result in hundreds of hours of rework
Mm.
and wasted time. So
Right.
that one part, that one step that begins this really simple seeming task, if not well executed, can be the bottleneck that destroys a whole deal.
That's the sanctity of that task.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Uh,
yes.
and to bring it back so that the to, I'm always kind of like, what's the continuity to our conversations? Because I know you and I can go all kinds of places, and I think that there to take it back to the loneliest enterprise that leadership can be, that there is there it's hard for me to imagine a more profound loneliness in an organization than feeling like either I've got to do it or I've got to give the odious crappy task to you.
Mm.
Both of those are lonely. That I'm having to subject you to this is a lonely experience.
And it lacks creativity. It
Mm-hmm.
lacks creativity because what I'll tell you is this is an incredible world we live in right now. You know, these tasks that may be lower value in the value stack, but are still incredibly important to get done right.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much choice now in how they may be able to be delivered. So you may say, okay, I have an organization, but all of my organization is taxed because we're overworked or we have too much to do. But there's this other process that I need to get done and somebody else needs to do it because it's costing the company too much for me to do it. And first, even coming to that realization is a different kind of consciousness, right? Is recognizing, oh my gosh, I am costing my company money by selfishly holding on to this task
Mm.
for which I am probably only mildly competent.
Yeah.
I'm learning this myself. We hired a new finance person. We have an asset in the finance department now, and she started in January. And oh my gosh, I forgot what really competent finance help felt like. This lady was able to take systems and all these things that we had created, and she is a superstar.
Mm.
And she's taking it and she's rock and she has limitations. There are things I know I can't push her to do, but we have gotten her to a place where she's now taken processes and she's run with them and she's turned back and written an entire manual on her job. So when she went on vacation last week, her boss was able to step in and just do all the things in the manual. And not all the things in the manual, but by the time she came back from vacation, it took her a day and a half to get back up to speed, which was operationally amazing, right? Um, by contrast, we if you don't have that kind of delegation, there are resources like Upwork and temporary task management options that if you write a good enough delegation direction for and spend just a little bit amount of time, you can find a resource to help not necessarily subject somebody else on your organization who will also suck at said task. Not that the task is sucky, the task is holy. It has a place in your process, and every process step is an opportunity for grace and excellence.
Yeah.
But they may not be, or you may not be competent enough to deliver that task at world class standard. And if we start thinking that way, our organizations become far more flexible and far more collaborative. Because the other thing that goes to die is a sense of arrogance. And
Mm.
the arrogance that was costing me too much was to believe that I was too good to do said task. Battery acid for productivity. How can I sell you the idea to come do this work for me if I think I'm above it
Yeah.
and it is beneath me? So if you're doing it, does that mean you are beneath me? That's the code that we don't realize we're communicating when we think that way. So
Yes.
instead, you recognize the task is amazing. The task is holy. I am the one that needs help. And humility. I am not competent at this thing. I might even be excellent, but I am not world class.
I will never forget reading an article about the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar organization who once a week cleans the toilet in his office.
Mm.
And the the work that he is doing, as I understand it, and I don't remember the article. At this point, I remember that the article exists, and
Sure.
I don't remember exactly how the article frames this. But what I certainly took away from my reading of it was that while the the work of having a clean toilet is not it beneath his pay grade, right?
Hmm.
Not beneath him, beneath his pay grade. That it is not a good use of company resources
Sure.
to pay the CEO to clean the toilet in
Correct.
order to have a clean toilet. It is an incredible use of company resources to pay the CEO for that same task of cleaning the toilet, not in order to have a clean toilet, but in order to communicate on no uncertain terms. There is
Cleaning
no
the
task
toilet is
beneath
important.
anybody.
Amen.
Yeah,
Yes. Fantastic story. Fantastic story. And we get to do that with ourselves
yeah,
because as we become more successful, it's interesting to see where seduction lies, right? The
yeah,
idea that, ooh, I've got this. And I'm really grateful for the business we have today because like you, there was a time where it was just me. It
mhm,
was it was a team of one. There was one person doing the work, one person selling, one person contracting, one person, you know, cleaning up, one person sending the invoices. That was me. And the fact that I could get anybody to come help was freaking amazing. Amazing. And so there is a gratitude, a willingness to do whatever the business needs that I feel like we get to have. And it's strange. We're keeping on theme here where we're talking about the loneliest enterprise, where we get to do it, but build ourselves into a world where we don't have to do it.
Mm.
And we understand that compassion and creating environments of humility and kindness and dignity are important. And in order to do so, you recognize the worth and value of the people and the worth and value of each step in the process, recognizing that your power and potentially your confusion are propped up by the opportunity to be in service, not because you are somehow lauded to be more than you are.
Hmm.
You get to lead these people. So when you said to me earlier, this is probably another topic for another day, but I'll stab you back. You said to me that you led this thing on motivated organizations. That's what I took away. That's how I anchored it in my brain. I kind of smiled and I said, "Oh wow, why doesn't it seem so inorganic that an organization would need to be motivated?" That just kind of broke my brain. Like motivation is a natural thing that comes up when you have people that are really focused on trying to solve folks' problems and you don't have enough time or enough money and we're running up against deadlines. There's nothing but motivation. That's just
Right.
kind of what comes in
Yeah.
the suit. But here we are. So the idea is that I don't know. There's this balance that we get to explore where ah, I get to do this stuff. This stuff gets to happen. I remain responsible, but I get to do it more and more at scale so that I can find people who find this task absolutely captivating. And I
And we
treat
can
that
create
task.
the organization where they get to have the same experience of I get to do this.
Yes, yes. And we get to honor that work with that spirit first. It starts with us, where I am not delegating some crappy task to you. I'm telling you, this thing is crazy important. And if it's not done right, we were going to fail. And guess what? I'm not the right person to do it because I don't have the skills and I'm not in the right line and the opportunity cost is too high. Here are all the reasons why doing this is more expensive to the company if I do it. But if I empower you to do it and we can do it, we can get it done together. Even if it's I put you in charge of it and we go get an outsourced person to go execute on it, but we can manage its quality, let's do that together. But we never demean the actual work.
Yeah.
And so when the work is respected and the people are respected and the commitment to service is absolutely underscored, you win whatever game you play. You know, you march on the field.
And there is something that we can do, I think, also not only to transform our own work,
Mm,
the quality of our own work, and I don't even mean their quality like the excellence of the output, although that will follow.
mm.
The quality of our experience of doing the work. There was something that you said that made me that reminded me of Tom Sawyer.
Okay.
And I think it's the opening scene of the book where he has to whitewash the
Paint
fence.
fence. Yes.
And we talk about it, I think, very often as he conducts this scam wherein he acts excited about it so that other people want to and will and do perform the task on his behalf.
Yes.
Well, maybe it's a scam. And yet, every single person who engages in that activity leaves having thought, wow, what a privilege. I got to whitewash that fence. Nobody leaves feeling like they got gypped.
Well, and we get it. We have an opportunity to appreciate where scams lie, right? Of course, clearly you're going to be purveyors of real quality work. And where I think a scam becomes applicable is where the presentation of the value of the work is out of real congruence with how you choose to feel about it. It's the
Mhm.
feeling that is presented as inauthentic. But in truth and fact, I feel like, and this is probably the last point I'll make today, our currency as leaders, as entrepreneurs, our superpower, if you could identify it, is that we have the ability to generate enthusiasm about anything.
Mm.
Like you get excited. What do you do for a living, Aaron? You take people in a room, you write on a tablet, and you tell them what they told you. That's what you do. That's that's like 90% of what you do.
It is a good
And
lot of it.
yet, well, it's probably 80% of what you do. But because you generate curiosity, inspiration, enthusiasm for what would be a banal concept, you make people feed your excitement, and you respect them for having whatever views they have, and you fight them, but you fight them without resisting them. You have them break their own arms to have their own insights and
Mm.
walk away with something that feels valuable, even though they spent 85% of the time talking.
And speaking of motivation, right, is like one of the messages this morning was you cannot motivate people.
Mm,
You can help them get out of the way of their natural motivation. You
perfect.
can help create an environment where they can be inspired. And
Perfect.
to your point, so much of what saps our motivation, and it's true of us as leaders, and it's true of the people whom we lead, is the feeling that what we've got is insufficient. What I've got is
Mm,
insufficient. So why should I bother being motivated?
mm. We can do a whole hour just on insufficiency.
Yeah. Yeah.
Consider
And
that.
I'm moved by this conversation and by this. I hadn't thought about it exactly like this until this conversation where what one of the great graces that we can offer as leaders is to help people see how sufficient they are in order to help them be inspired by the work that is before them.
Mm, that's probably a whole other hour in and of itself.
No doubt. All right. Hugh, this has been a tremendous conversation. Thank you for your time, and you who are watching, thank you for your time as well. This has been Leadership Uncertain. This was certainly an adventure in confusion and in power and in love and in dignity, just as we promised. All four today we covered, I'd say.